going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of After the Whistle. It's me again, and man, this weekend was crazy. I know I said on last week's prediction show, man, it's always the weekends where the slate is kind of just vanilla, so to speak. It's always the week where we look at a slate and we look at the games and we're like, there's really only one or two matchups that are really intriguing. The rest of them could potentially be blowouts. Those are always the weekends that college football is going to prove itself to be the volatile sport that it is. It is a dog-eat-dog world in the world of college football. We had some big upsets this weekend. I mean, we had Texas going into the swamp and Florida beating them in the swamp. We had Vanderbilt play Bama pretty good up into halftime. Like I said on the prediction show, I felt like that, Vanderbilt would play Bama pretty close, and the Bama would essentially pull away later in the game. Had Virginia beating Louisville 30-27 in overtime. The biggest by far upset of the weekend, though, and we will definitely dive into it and get into it. It wasn't even a game that I mentioned on the show last week because I didn't feel that it needed to be predicted. I mean, you had an 0-4 team going up against Penn State. Lo and behold, UCLA beats Penn State in Pasadena 42-37. So first things first, catch me on the socials. I know I haven't really mentioned it in a couple episodes. If you've got social media, you got Facebook, you got Instagram. Look me up on those two platforms. Facebook, it's just ATW Cast is the way to find me on Facebook, or you can just search After the Whistle. It should pop up. You'll recognize the logo if you know what the logo looks like. Next, on that front, you've got the Instagram page. You just at ATW CFB. That's After the Whistle College Football. Look me up on there. If you like to follow me on Instagram and you like to follow some funny clown posts where I clown on fan bases, where I, just pick on people that deserve it, because people that overhype things. And that's where it's a pretty good segue into the first little bit of the show today. We are going to go take a trip, hop on a bus, hop on your scooter, whatever else. Let's go take a trip down to Gainesville, Florida for a second. Let's talk about this football game in the swamp on Saturday. Texas getting beat by Florida. Does anybody in the country coach better than Billy Napier when his back is against the wall? And it's a legit, serious question. But Florida beats Texas 29-21 in the swamp. And, one of the things that I like to think about is like I said, Billy Napier, when his back's against the wall, man, he's coached in some games over the last couple years where we think he's done. He's dead man walking. He is whatever you want to call it. It's just like we're waiting on the termination letter, so to speak. We're waiting on the statement to be released by Scott Strickland down there at the University of Florida. And Billy Napier just comes through with some wizardry and beats a team like Texas. And let's not get ahead of ourselves here either, because I think Billy Napier deserves credit for beating Texas. I'm not downgrading that win by any stretch of the imagination, because it was a heck of a coaching job by Billy Napier and his staff. But someone that hosts a podcast down in South Georgia called After the Whistle kind of told y'all to be hesitant about Texas. Told y'all to be hesitant about Texas. Pump the brakes. Told y'all to be hesitant. Pump the brakes about Arch Manning. Who listened? Certainly not anybody of, quote, importance, because Paul Feinbaum's takes on quarterback play here recently have gotten just about as bad as his hairline. And what I mean by that is, we heard all off season long, man, we heard Arch Manning, he's going to be the next Tim Tebow. Arch Manning, this kid is a godsend. He's the most talented player we've seen play in the SEC at the quarterback position since Tim Tebow. False. And I've been saying this for weeks now. Weeks. No one, Now, I've had some people reach out to me in a negative light, like, you're being too hard on the kid. He'll get it. He'll get it. He'll get it. No, he's not going to. And if this Saturday proved anything, it is that Arch Manning is a Manning in last name only. He is nothing like Eli. He is nothing like Peyton. He is trash. Capital T. Capital T-R-A-S-H. Trash. I've been saying it. I'm going to continue to say it. The only reason that kid is playing college football at that level at the University of Texas as the QB1 is because of his last name. It's certainly not because of his play on the field. And I've had some people say, well, Colby, you're just obsessed with Arch. You're just talking about him all the time. Someone has to be the voice of reason here. Someone's got to be the voice of reason because apparently nobody is. Everybody's talking about how great that Arch Manning is going to be. Heisman winner, national championship winner, you name it. First overall pick in the draft. You name it, they've said it. Not this guy, but they've said it. Somebody has to be the voice of reason and counteract all of the bull crap that we have heard about Arch Manning over the last 6 months, maybe even more. Somebody's got to counteract it. Because that's all we heard from the talking heads at ESPN, from the talking heads that are the Texas Longhorn fans all off season. We're going to run the SEC next year because we got Arch. You couldn't even run the Big 12. Sit down. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if any particular school ran the Big 12, it was your arch nemesis, your biggest rival, Oklahoma, correct? Yes. So all we heard before Texas joined the SEC, we're going to come in and we're going to run the SEC. Blah, blah, blah. Nope. Like, we're not even there yet. We're not talking about that. Yeah, you made it to the SEC championship last year. Didn't win it. Got stomped in Austin by the SEC champion. Now, you're 3-2, unranked, and just lost to a 1-3 Florida team. So, Texas is reeling. So, and this is just a little bit, I could say a little bit of karma, maybe. Karma for the Texas fans saying they're going to come in and run the SEC. And they're going to be the kings of the conference. Arch Manning's going to be the best quarterback in the SEC, the best quarterback in the country. Man, that foot can't taste good. Can't taste good. I hope you didn't step in anything before you put your foot in your mouth, Texas fans, because here we are, you know. And if only people listened to people that say, I told you so. But like I said, you continue to listen to guys like Paul Feinbaum. You continue to listen to guys like that on ESPN whose quarterback takes are absolutely horrendous, you know. And here we are, Arch Manning, one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC, not even nowhere near the top. You don't even need to mention Arch Manning in the same breath as what we mentioned as a Ty Simpson. Completely different quarterbacks. But let's not dwell on that for too long, because I feel like we can dwell on the mediocrity of Texas too long to where we don't give credit where it's due here. And we're not giving credit to who we need to give credit to for this particular win. And that's the Florida Gators. And I know that I said last week on the prediction show that Florida they're not a good football team. They have a really good defense. They have had a good defense all year. I mean, statistically, they're a top 15 unit in the country. I mean, and I just felt like 1 week, I didn't know when it was going to be, and I know I said that. I didn't know if it was going to be this past weekend, if it was going to be the following weekend, which Saturday it was going to be this year, but I had a feeling, a gut feeling that Florida was going to put it all together one weekend. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And they put it together this past weekend. And they didn't even really play that well offensively. I mean, they played okay, they played good, but I wouldn't say they set the woods on fire. I mean, yeah, they scored 29 points, but it definitely doesn't help when the other quarter. It definitely helps you to score points when you get extra possessions by way of 3 interceptions thrown by Arch Manning. But Florida's defense, it's definitely a fact, a matter, or a fact to be said that this Florida defense deserves a lot of credit for what they're able to do, generating turnovers, the way that they're able to play the run. I mean, this is a very, very impressive unit. And, Florida jumped on Texas pretty early. I mean, it was, there we were, the end of the first quarter, 10-0. And at that moment, the first drive that Florida had, the first touchdown drive, they went 13 plays, 84 yards, and took about 7 minutes off the clock. And the way that they just bullied Texas, I remember watching it, and I saw that first drive. Florida drives down there, scores, makes it 7-0. I was like, oh, man, that doesn't look good for Texas. The way that Florida was able to just manage that drive, go down the field. Then, they get the football back. Then they go 10 plays for 64. And then kick a field goal. They don't finish it off with a touchdown. They finish it off with a field goal. But 10 plays for 64 yards, and they take over 4 minutes off the clock there. Florida held the football for 85% of the first quarter. And I figured that was going to be the recipe to beat Texas. Keep them off the field, which I don't think – Texas is not the type of team you're going to beat by playing keep away, because their offense just sucks. So it's not like you have to say we got to keep their really powerful offense on the sideline to keep them from scoring. They're not going to score anyway. They're going to get in their own way. Texas is a car that doesn't have brakes veering toward a cliff. They're going to crash eventually. You just got to give them time. They're god awful. But Florida, great game plan. DJ Lagway, a lot of easy throws, and I liked the fact that Billy Napier called a game to where Lagway wasn't put in a position where he had to really force a football. I mean, he threw the one interception, but on top of that, 21 of 28, 2 touchdowns, 298 yards, interception. Didn't really have to do too much. He had a few little easy throws. Now, there was a couple times where they stretched the field. You got to keep the defense honest. But for the most part, Billy Napier allowed him to settle in. The plays that he called allowed him to settle in. I thought it was a great game plan from Billy Napier. But like I said, who coaches better than him? Who coaches better than him when his back's against the wall? When he knows that he's on the chopping block, he's gonna coach his tail off. And great win for them guys down there. I don't think it changes anything. I think Florida is still like a 4-8 football team, 5-7. I just think Texas is really bad. I think the expectations coming out of Austin were way too high for this football team coming into this football season. So, moving on from that. I don't want to get too much heat from the Texas fans out there. I know y'all going to come after me. I don't want to get too much heat from me. But, hey, let's quit kidding ourselves here. You're terrible. And it's okay. You want a hug? Come find me. I'll give you a hug. It's all right. So let's go out to Pasadena. Let's take a trip all the way out to the west. Let's go to Pasadena and let's talk about Penn State. And let's talk about the fact that you want to talk about one team that can't meet expectations. Let's talk about another team and let's talk about another coach that cannot meet expectations. And let's talk about the Penn State Nittany Lions and their head guy, James Franklin. Let's talk about this for a second because I watched this game and there was a few things about this game left me puzzled. One, Penn State's defense, non-existent. Absolutely just non-existent. Got railroaded. 450, nearly 450 yards allowed. 280 of those on the ground. UCLA lined up and ran the football down Penn State's throat. Let me repeat that. just in case y'all didn't quite gauge what I'm saying. UCLA, an 0-4 football team, ran the football down Penn State's throat. 280 yards on 52 carries, 5.4 yards a carry for this group. I mean, not to mention the fact Nico kind of had a little bit of a, hey, I'm still here party, even though, I'm not a big Nico guy. I don't think he's that good. I think he's middle of the road. He can have these games where he can just play out of his mind like he did Saturday. 128 yards for him on the ground. 166 through the air, 17 of 24, 2 touchdowns. I think this is further indication that James Franklin, is just not the guy. He's not a big game guy, and now, it's like everybody's been giving James Franklin grief over, the years. Oh, he can't win the big game. Well, James Franklin went in this game like, joke's on you. You say I can't win the big game. I'm going to struggle with a mediocre opponent. You say I struggle with the tough ones. I'm going to struggle with a mediocre opponent. And by God, here we go. 42-37, UCLA over Penn State. James Franklin. Let's break this down a little bit more, because I don't think a lot of people are gauging how bad this loss is, how horrible of a loss that this is for Penn State. So let's think about something for a second. James Franklin lost to a team that was 0-4. That team had losses to UNLV and New Mexico. UCLA's offensive coordinator had only 2 days to prepare for this football game. 2 days. And he called this game plan and beat them. Doesn't look good, right? Penn State fans, if you listen to this show, don't know if you do or not, but doesn't look good, right? I mean, Drew Aller, non-existent. I don't know if we talk about how people hyped up Arch Manning all offseason. Let's talk about the people that hyped up Drew Aller. I mean, Drew Aller's a good quarterback, but the people that hyped him up to be the, a first-round pick, top 5 pick, whatever, like, we do, it's like, I mentioned this a few weeks ago on an episode. We do these kids such an injustice by just propping them up before the season starts, talking about how they're going to be a first-round pick, the first quarterback off the board. They're going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. They're going to be a national champion. We prop these quarterbacks up, and they see these expectations. I mean, they have to. The new age of technology, the phones, the iPads, the TVs, the everything, they're going to see these takes. They're going to see that people think that they are just the best quarterback that's ever come through Austin, Texas, or the best quarterback that's ever come through Penn State. And you kind of wonder how much that plays in to their psyche, so to speak. How much of that is to blame for what we're seeing out of Arch Manning and what we're seeing out of Drew Aller? Or are they just not good? That's really the only two options. I'm not in the business of making excuses. I'm just letting you know, hey, could that be part of the problem? The expectations are set way up here for these quarterbacks, and when they perform way down here, we're like, well, gee, I don't know why that's happening. So, either way, though, an embarrassing loss for Penn State, embarrassing loss for James Franklin, that whole coaching staff, that team. Terrible that your quarterback, who's not known to be a runner, was your leading rusher with 78 yards. Penn State, when you have Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, and your quarterback, Drew Aller, who runs like a 5-second 40. Watch that kid run the other day. He looked like Tom Brady out there. Looked like he had cinder blocks tied to his freaking feet. And you mean to tell me that's your leading rusher against UCLA? Like, good gosh, man. Like, that's embarrassing for me, and I don't even give a crap what happens to Penn State. I don't care. Lose every game of the year. Who cares? That's embarrassing. And if I'm a Penn State fan, I don't care if he does win 9 or 10 games every single season. He needs to hit the road. At this point, I'd rather have Keegan-Michael Key coaching my freaking football team than James Franklin. Terrible. I had so many more notes on that game, but that's really just to sum it up. It's terrible. Inexcusable for that football team to lose in that spot. I mean, you expect Penn State to lose to Ohio State. You expect them to lose to Oregon. You expect them to lose to teams like that. But come on, man. UCLA? And what's next for these guys? Penn State, unranked. I forgot to mention that too about Texas. So is Texas. Both these teams now, unranked, out of the top 25. And these were by far two of the most overhyped teams to start the season. Further proving the point that the AP poll is trash. It's trash. We need to quit doing the preseason poll. What we need to do, I don't even think we need to do a preseason poll in general. We just let every team play the first game of the season and then have a ranking based on how they play. And then move from there. Week to week. Everything changes week to week based on performance. But the preseason polls, man, Penn State and Texas were top 5 teams coming into the season. Look at where they're at now. You know what I mean? Terrible. And Penn State's got to watch out because now the fact that you can't beat UCLA, they still have to play Ohio State. They still have to play Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska. They got to play Iowa. Penn State's completely, they could be completely off the wagon here soon. They have no shot at making the college football playoff now. No shot. Because I don't see them beating Ohio State, especially in Columbus. No chance. But that's 3 losses. They're done. Penn State's done. Now, somebody asked me, going kind of back, I don't like going back, but I forgot to mention it, going back to Texas. It's can Texas still make the playoff? No. I don't think so. They're done too. And the reason I say that, this loss is terrible. You're 3-2 through 5 games, and you've still got Oklahoma, you've got Georgia, and you've got A&M on your schedule. If you win 2 of those 3, that still puts you at 3 losses. You're done. Also, you've got to go to Mississippi State, which now has been proven to not be as easy as a football game as we anticipated earlier in the season. They have to go to Lexington, a night game here in a couple weeks. I'm just saying, based on what I saw this past weekend, there's another opportunity for Texas to slip up against a team that they shouldn't really lose to. And this team is way too talented to be unranked. I'm not saying that they're terrible. I'm not saying that, they're just not as good as everybody made them out to be. And it's frustrating, but they're just not as good as everybody made them out to be. I feel like they're a 20th to 25th ranked team, but they're not top 5. I think Texas has an 8-4 roster with a 6-6 quarterback, and I think that's the issue with Texas. Take that with whatever you want to take it with, but I will say it is very, very obvious what's going on at the quarterback position. Backup quarterback comes in on Saturday against Florida. Arch Manning's helmet comes off. Backup quarterback comes in, zips one, dude. I'm talking a laser. Little out route, zips it, put it right in the dude's chest. The guy hadn't even turned around yet. Ball's in the air. As soon as he turns around, boom, right in the chest. Better throw than Arch Manning made all day long. So, best thing for Texas is the best thing to happen to Texas going forward is the Nepo baby experiment in Austin, Texas needs to end yesterday. Terrible. Moving on. Tired of dwelling on the Penn State and Texas thing. So, moving on. Let's go Georgia, Kentucky. Georgia bounces back from their loss to Alabama. They look great. Look, they actually got off to a hot start. And this is one of the biggest question marks, that I had about Georgia. After 4 games into the season, we were like, oh man, they just start slow. They allowed Tennessee to build a cushion, 21-7 at one point. They allowed Alabama to build a cushion, 14-0. you can't spot teams 14 points and expect to win a lot, especially in the Southeastern Conference. You can't do it. But the difference in this Georgia team Saturday versus what we've seen this season so far is they started fast. They had 2 really good drives to start the game. Had the first drive where you had it go 12 plays for 75 yards, took about 5 minutes off the clock. Second drive they had, they go 13 plays for 96 yards, take another 5 minutes off the clock. You had a 6-minute drive and a 5-minute drive. Then Kentucky comes back, scores. You have kind of a little bit of a busted coverage situation on that third drive, or on that first drive or second drive, for Kentucky. But ultimately, the defense for Georgia just settled in after that. After that, they have another touchdown drive, and it's 35-7. Coming in about midway through the third, a little bit more than midway through the third. I think it was like 5 minutes left in the third quarter. They go up 35-7. This is the Georgia that, we kind of have expected, looking into this season. They ran the football 42 times for 183 yards. And, throwing the football as well, 245 yards, 18 to 27. Ryan Puglisi got to see some action as far as, he got to see some action throwing the football. I think he threw 4 passes. He was 3 of 4. He did throw an interception, but other than that, it was comforting to see Puglisi come into the football game and the play calling not be like handoff. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to see that. As a Georgia fan, we bring the backup in. I want to see him throw the football. He's got to get some practice throwing the football. He's got to practice, pushing the ball down the field. But ultimately, Gunner, ends the day 15 of 23, 196 yards, touchdown and an interception. And then, surprise, surprise, the leading rusher again is Chauncey Bowens. He gets the bulk of the carries on Saturday, 15. I know it's like I said after the Alabama game, I felt like he needs to be the guy moving forward. He needs to be the guy getting the bulk of the carries. Just because of the fact that he's very electric, but he protects the football. That's the biggest thing with him. But, him being, 5'11", 225 pounds, freshman kid, just takes care of the football. That's the biggest thing. And ball security is job security. So it's a big thing in the football world. But, Kentucky ultimately, I tell you, I'll give you one thing. I do some positives on Kentucky. I was very impressed with Cutter Boley, the quarterback for Kentucky, freshman. 25 of 41, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. I was impressed with the way that he handled that moment. Sanford Stadium, Athens, Georgia, homecoming, a little bit of a hostile crowd, and very impressed with the way that he handled himself as a freshman, because there's a lot of people that falter in that area. But, that to me is if I'm a Kentucky fan, I look at that as being a positive. I look at the fact that kid was able to go in that environment and perform the way he did. Definitely a encouraging sign on that front at the quarterback position, especially if Calzada is going to be out for an extended, period of time. There was some talk that he was going to be back for this game, but didn't ultimately get the start. And so definitely comforting to know that you have a backup that is capable of handling his own, even on the road in a hostile environment. And he's only going to play better at home. So moving on to the next one, let's go to Texas A&M and Mississippi State. Was a game that I kind of had circled. I thought it was going to be a spot for another upset. I thought Mississippi State was a very, very live underdog going into that game on Saturday night. Texas A&M, for a while there, the game was very tight. I believe it was 7-3. It was 7-3 A&M at halftime. Then A&M comes out, outscores Mississippi State 24-6 in the second half. Mike Elko and those guys, they just stepped on the gas. They stepped on the gas there towards the end. Texas A&M, with a almost 500 yards of total offense. Great performance from them. 300 of that on the ground. This is a team that, prides themselves on physicality, prides themselves on running the football. And they were able to do whatever they wanted up front. And the split, likewise, is where this game was won, in my opinion. Aside from the 2 turnovers on Mississippi State's side, you had one team run for 303 yards. You had another team run for 77. So that's how you win football games. And then also Mississippi State, 1 of 10 on third down. Big problem for them is their third down efficiency. A&M, that defense, relentless. Relentless getting into the backfield, disrupting plays, some negative yardage stuff for Mississippi State. Reuben Owens kind of had a big day. I know when I talk about this A&M offense, I talk about Le'Veon Moss just because I'm really last year I was really high on Le'Veon Moss. I said he was he's the best running back in the SEC last year until the point that he got hurt. And but Reuben Owens has kind of emerged as that go-to guy, that 5'11", 215-pound sophomore out of El Campo, Texas. Just a force. Just a very good runner, runs well, runs really well behind his pads. Like he's a joy to watch tote the rock. Very good contact balance. Not a guy you want to arm tackle. Got to wrap him up, got to get him to the ground. That's true for a lot of running backs in the SEC. But watching Reuben Owens run, very elusive, but also is not afraid to absolutely run through your chest if he needs to. And then, Le'Veon Moss adds, 36 yards to Reuben Owens' 142. Mario Craver, 6 receptions, 80 yards. One of the best receivers in the country by a long shot. But this Texas A&M defense, man, I'm telling you, Taron York, Damian Sanford, Marcus Ratcliffe, Dalton Brooks, Jordan Shaw, these guys, they're nasty. They're a really good unit. And I was kind of critical of them first part of the season. We were watching this team and they were giving up like 30 points a game, and it's like, man, they've got the dudes. This is not a unit when you watch them and you see the names, you see the stars, you see it was a great recruiting class that brought these guys in, and some of these guys transferred in, and it's like, man, what is up? Because this is not a Mike Elko defense. This isn't how they've looked in the past, whether it was when he was at Duke or whether now he's at A&M. It's not a Mike Elko defense. They looked like a Mike Elko defense on Saturday, and this A&M team, I know last year they came on kind of strong there midway through the season, almost, if they'd have beat Texas there at the end of the year last year, they would have made their way to Atlanta to play for an SEC championship. This A&M team is kind of figuring some things out, and that should be a very dangerous thought for the rest of the people that remain on their schedule, that they're starting to kind of figure some things out here about 5-6 weeks into the season. They're figuring things out, and they're only going to get better from here. So really good football team. Mississippi State, if you're a Mississippi State fan, I don't think you have a whole lot to really hang your head about here. You've already doubled your win total from last season. I mean, last season this was a team that went 2-10. Now you're a team that's 4-2, went toe-to-toe with Tennessee, and for one half you went toe-to-toe with Texas A&M, and then you had a lot of miscues in the second half that led to some A&M points, some fumbles. And, you're not going to win football games like that. They could have made it a little bit more respectable on the final score had they not turned the ball over like they did. But, ultimately, it's the way the football crumbles. It's the way the cookie crumbles, in this game of football, where you can't give a team that's as good as A&M extra possessions, and that's what they ended up doing. And but A&M, forced to be reckoned with. A&M's a wagon. That's a really good football team, and really excited to see what they do the rest of the season going forward. I mean, they got a matchup. Florida's coming to Kyle Field next Saturday. Then they go to Arkansas. Then the big one on the 25th of October where they go to Death Valley. I would imagine that's going to be a night game. I would really love it to be. As a college football fan and somebody who wants to watch really good football, Texas A&M at LSU on at a 7:30 kick on the 25th of October is something I'm really, really looking forward to. So we can only hope. And then they go to Missouri after that. Then South Carolina comes to town. Then they got Samford, and then the big game at the end of the year with Texas in. They go to Austin this time. They're not at Kyle Field. So A&M, definitely, yes. The question is, can they win the SEC? Yes, but from what I've seen so far, and if they keep playing ball like they played this past Saturday, they can pretty much hang with anybody, and that's anybody in the country. That's not just anybody in the SEC, anybody in the country. They looked really good this past weekend. They keep running the football like that, dangerous for the rest of college football. Vanderbilt and Alabama, hey, Vanderbilt, you gave it your best shot. Diego Pavia, man, you ran your mouth. Here we are. It's just like a few years ago, Vanderbilt was undefeated again. Similar kind of story here where Vanderbilt was undefeated. One of their linemen ran his mouth, said, you're going to come into our house. We're going to show you how to play SEC ball. Alabama, you're next. And Jalen Hurts said at the time, theoretically, they are next, which is grammatically incorrect. It's not theoretically, it's not theoretically we are next on their schedule. It's, yes, we are next. It is factual that we are next on their schedule, but, Alabama education. But anyway, Vanderbilt, goes in. They think that, they got something for Alabama. It's 14-14 at halftime, and I did say on the prediction show last week that I thought that this game could potentially be tied at halftime or very close at halftime. It could be a game, and then I felt kind of that Alabama was going to pull away in the second half. I felt like they were going to extend it. My score prediction was, let's see, got to find my notes so I don't misspeak. 34-23 was my score prediction. Alabama had Alabama covering, winning by 11. Alabama wins 30-14, wins by 16. So win by a larger margin than I predicted. And they just pulled away in that second half. We can't expect – Vanderbilt is a good football team. To beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, it takes a lot more than what Vanderbilt is. Now, if Alabama would have turned the ball over 3 or 4 times, maybe, we could have seen the potential for an upset. They had one interception. Ty Simpson finally throws his first interception here in the 5th game of the season. But, ultimately they did what they had to do to win this football game. Running the football, they committed to the run. Vandy didn't really commit to the run, but likewise, when you only hold the ball for about 20 minutes in a 60-minute football game, you're not going to get really a whole lot of opportunities to run the football or to run your offense in general. So Bama just really, to me, the score is not as reflective as it could be of how dominant this game was for Alabama. I feel like it was a game that, Vanderbilt was in there for a brief period, and then Alabama just asserted their dominance in the second half. Ty Simpson still looks like, to me, the best quarterback in the country. When we look at these numbers for him, 23 of 31, 2 touchdowns and an interception. The interception was ill-advised. It wasn't a throw that he probably should have made, but I'm pretty sure that Kalen DeBoer and this coaching staff probably are like, whew, get that weight off his shoulders, get the monkey off his back of not having thrown an interception yet here at this point in the season, but he'll learn from it. He seems like a smart kid. He seems like a really good football player. He'll learn from that, get better. And to me right now, there's no better quarterback in the Southeastern Conference than Ty Simpson. There might not even be a better quarterback in the country than Ty Simpson. And yes, Ohio State fans, he's better than Julian Sayin, regardless of what y'all want to say about doing your little swap-de-doo or whatever, with talking about Ty Simpson is not there. He's at Alabama, and Julian Sayin's not at Alabama. He's up there. Alabama's got the better quarterback on their roster than Ty Simpson. Trust me on that. Goes for, 340 yards again. He's just, to me, good. And this was a good game also for Ryan Williams. 6 receptions, 98 yards. But, Ryan Williams, who kind of, in my opinion, has kind of been surpassed by Jeremy Bernard in that receiver room as far as being the best receiver in that room. I always thought that Jeremy Bernard was just a better receiver all around. Yeah, Ryan Williams is going to make the big play. Ryan Williams is going to, do the crazy, one-handed grabs and do the, jump ball opportunities and all that. He's going to be great at it. And he's freaky athletic. And he's probably in the open field. He's the best player on the field. And that's on both sides, both teams. But as far as the technicality of playing the receiver position, I mean, I just think Jeremy Bernard is better. But Ryan Williams had a good game as well. Bama moves to 4-1 on the season with the win over Vanderbilt, and moves on to the next part of their schedule, kind of the meat and potatoes of their schedule, because they go to Columbia, Missouri next Saturday to face Missouri Tigers. Then the following Saturday, they got third Saturday in October. Tennessee coming to Tuscaloosa, and they go to Columbia. Then they got the LSU Tigers coming to town on November 8th. Then Oklahoma comes to Tuscaloosa. So still a tough row to hoe for the Alabama Crimson Tide coming down the stretch here over the next month and a half of the season. We're going to see, we're going to see what Bama's made out of. Now, we've seen them beat Georgia. We saw them lost to Florida State, which now looks to be like it's a bad loss now. But we'll see what this we'll see a little bit more about what this Alabama team's made out of going forward into the college football season. So going into the let's say the big game of the weekend, Miami, Florida State, and final score. If you didn't watch this football game and you look at the final score 28-22, you would think, oh, that game was pretty good. No, it wasn't. Miami beat Florida State from pillar to post the whole football game. I mean, the 19 points that Florida State scored in the fourth quarter were kind of like I wouldn't call them garbage time points, because I feel like that'd be doing an injustice to a couple things here, not just Florida State, but Miami as well. But the points that they scored were Miami is backed up in zone. They're not playing as aggressive as they were earlier in the football game. The pass rush is not really coming after Castellanos. They're giving him all kind of time to sit back there, scan the field, throw the football. So the defense was playing a lot softer and less aggressive than they were earlier in the football game, and just kind of, allowed Florida State to run this very free-flowing offense where they were able to gain a lot of yards and, score some points there to make it look a little bit more, look like a little bit more competitive, so to speak. But no, Miami beat Florida State pillar to post. This wasn't even a real football game. I know I picked Florida State to win this one. I've been struggling with it for weeks, guys. There was a while, if you'd have asked me about 2 weeks ago, I would have said Miami's going to beat the snot out of Florida State, just because I felt like Miami on the front, at their fronts, and that's just the offensive front and the front seven on defense, they're just better. They're going to control the line of scrimmage. You control the line of scrimmage, you win these types of football games, right? 90% of the time you do. And I just felt that Miami was just so much better than Florida State. But something, last week, something told me that I felt like that Miami, having not played a conference game yet, that their conference opener, essentially, going to Doak at night against a pissed-off Florida State team because they lost to Virginia the Friday night prior. I felt like that was an opportunity for Florida State to send a message and hand Miami their first loss of the season. I was wrong, unfortunately. But, Miami Carson Beck ends up throwing 4 touchdown passes, beats Florida State. Like I said, the score is not indicative of how bad of a beatdown this was. It looks, on paper, 28-22, you think, oh, they were within a score. No. Game was never close. But, Carson Beck continues to impress, 20 of 27, very efficient, 4 touchdowns and 241 yards. And then how about Malachi Toney? Like, is there any player in college football that's more electric than Malachi Toney? I don't know, because to me, that guy is the real deal. That's a safety blanket for a quarterback. It's just a guy that is just so fast, man. You can just chunk it down there, let him go get it. And that's exactly what kind of offense we saw out of Miami. There was a couple times where it was just like, give it to Toney and let him go to work. And he did. And then, like I said, this Miami defensive line, they're a unit. You got guys like Akeem Mesidor, you've got Reuben Bain, just a monster unit up front. Miami now has solidified themselves, to me, as I would argue they're the number one team in college football. I haven't seen much out of Ohio State to really show me they're better than Miami. But Ohio State, Miami, 1-2. I'm fine with that. I just feel like Miami's better. Likewise, that's a kind of a segue transition into a new segment that I'm doing now on every Monday on the recap shows. I'm going to be doing a segment called Highs and Lows. Lows spelled Lowes, not Lowe's Home Improvement, but Lowe's, brought to you by Low Electric Supply Company, my employer, full-time, whoop. But anyway, let's talk about who's on a high, who's on a low. And we're going to divide this category up, talk about who's on the highs right now. Who's on a high? It's got to be the team I just talked about, man, Miami. You go into Doak Campbell Stadium, beat the brakes off of Florida State. You kind of solidify yourself as a legit ACC title contender, a legit college football playoff contender, and, in my opinion, a national championship contender, because this team looks really good, led by Carson Beck. Mario Cristobal's got everybody dialed up. Front seven on defense is nasty, led by a guy like Ruben Bain. You've got guys on Miami like Malachi Toney. You've got C.J. Daniels. You've got Fletcher at running back. You've got a dynamic offense. That team's going to be hard to beat for anybody that plays them. I would love to submit my argument, the fact that Miami should be the number one ranked team in the country. Should be. Like, as it stands right now, should be the number one team in the country. They have a better resume than Ohio State. We're putting way too much weight on the Ohio State, beating Texas thing. Now that's an unranked Texas team, and you beat them by 7 points, and you only could score 14 against them. So Miami should be number one. Ohio State should be number two. But Miami is my first team, who's on a high. Number two team, who's on a high, Texas A&M, because a lot of people, myself included, picked this kind of to be an upset spot for A&M. I felt like Mississippi State had a lot, make it a better football game than it was. A&M just played with their food a little bit in the first half, but then second half came on and they just flatlined Mississippi State. A&M's definitely a team with a lot of playmakers, with a lot of playmakers there on the offensive side of the ball. Likewise, this defense is starting to look like a Mike Elko defense. So this team's going to be very dangerous for anybody that they've got, coming down their schedule. Third team that I'm going to say who's on a high, it's the Florida Gators. It's got to be the Florida Gators, beating Texas in the swamp. A big win for Billy Napier. But Florida fans, let me ask you a serious question. Do you want Billy Napier winning these kind of games? Because could he win, if he wins two more games like this before the end of the season, do they try to sell y'all on the fact that it's worth giving him another year in Gainesville to try to right the ship? Or kind of weird though. I've never understood that. You obviously want your team to win, but if you don't want Billy Napier around, what do you do? Your hands kind of tied there or what? But either way, a great win for Billy Napier and his staff down there. DJ Lagway looked great. Florida finally found a weekend where they seem to put it all together. They still didn't play, to me, in my opinion. I didn't think they played up to their full potential. But in order for them to get a win against Texas was great for that football team, great for their confidence going forward. But like I said, I don't think they played up to their full potential, which says a lot for Florida, which says a lot about Texas, because Texas looked god-awful. Next team, do one more who's on a high, Virginia. It's kind of like a little dark horse who's on a high pick for me. It's got to be the Virginia Cavaliers. I mean, to go into Louisville, beat a Louisville team led by Miller Moss with, the playmakers that they have at Louisville. Just another week, Tony Elliott's squad pulls it out in overtime. They beat Florida State last Friday night. Now they beat Louisville this past Saturday night in overtime. They're just like the Cardiac Cavaliers. That's what we're going to start calling them. Just kind of, they're going to take you to deep water. They're going to make sure they stick around. They're going to take you to overtime, and they're going to beat you. And that's a big deal for that football team moving forward. Virginia now ranked and well-deserved. Well-deserved in my opinion. So who's on a low? Got to be the two obvious picks. It's got to be Penn State. It's got to be Texas. Penn State, a lot of hype surrounding this football team to start the season, with a lot of senior leadership back. A lot of guys that have been in the program 3+ years coming back this year. Guys like Drew Aller. Then you've got the dynamic running back tandem of Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Got a lot of playmakers, going to have a really solid defense, solid offensive line. This was supposed to be the year that Penn State was going to punch through, and, get through that barrier, punch their ticket, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. Because I would argue that on their schedule, they easily have one more loss, could potentially have 2 more losses, maybe even 3 more losses before season's end. Penn State's dead in the water. They're done. It's really time for Penn State to start talking about James Franklin in a more serious tone. And is he the guy long-term there at State College? The other team, Texas. Who's down? Who's low? Texas. It's got to be the Texas Longhorns. Got to be another team that was very hyped up coming into the season. Arch Manning. I mean, I feel like we gave them way too much credit way too soon. They haven't lived up to a speck of the hype. The best game that Texas has played is against Sam Houston. And Arch Manning's looked good against those teams, but Ohio State looked terrible. Every other game against quality opponents, he's looked terrible. Looked terrible against Florida, 3 interceptions. Not the guy. Need to make the change. Need to make the quarterback change in Austin. If Steve Sarkisian doesn't make a quarterback change before next week's game, he doesn't have a spine, in my opinion, because it's got the experiment with Arch Manning's got to be over and done with. When your backup quarterback comes in, throws the ball with that much zip, looks that good, got to give him a shot, man. Got to give him a try. But Texas, way down. Way down. Penn State, way down after the loss to UCLA. Who's also down? I'm going to give one more. Give one more in this category, and I'm going to go kind of a game I didn't really talk about. I think I mentioned it on my quick hitter segment last week. But Michigan, Wisconsin. Who's down? Wisconsin. They're terrible. Man, for them to be in the Big Ten, for them to be in that region, that they're in, for them to be now 2-3 is terrible. Luke Fickell has not done anything to turn that program around. They still have yet to score. They scored 42 points against Middle Tennessee State. Whoop-de-doo. You know what I mean? Then they score 10 against Maryland, 14 against Alabama, 10 against Michigan. They got a game against Wisconsin this upcoming Saturday. They're probably not going to eclipse 14 points in that one. Then they got Ohio State coming to town on the 18th. They're going to lose that one. Then they go to Oregon. So I'm fully prepared to say that Wisconsin's going to lose their next 3 football games. And they will be 2-6 going into November. They will be 2-6. And Luke Fickell's got to be one of them guys. He's got to go at some point. He's got to be out of there in you can't let mediocrity hang around. Wisconsin is not a Notre Dame or an Alabama, or they don't have the rich history and all that, but it is still a football team that we expect to win 8-9 football games a year, and then eventually every few years have a year where they really contend, so to speak. Wisconsin, way down. Way, way, way down. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all once again for tuning in to the show. Catch me on Thursday. We're going to be going over the predictions for Week 7. Have a few games coming up. We have Georgia going to Jordan-Hare to take on the Auburn Tigers. A night game, 7:30. We have Ohio State going to play Illinois, the Fighting Illini, after getting stomped, absolutely curb stomped by Indiana a couple weeks ago. Illinois kind of found a different gear this past weekend. Can they make it a football game against Ohio State? We'll wait and see that. Alabama also going to Como, playing Missouri, currently opening up as a 3.5-point favorite. Very, very intriguing there. Indiana going to Autzen Stadium out, playing Oregon. And then we've got the Red River rivalry football game. We've also got some games kind of under the radar. We've got Florida, kind of a team riding a little bit of a high after beating Texas. Can they go to Kyle Field? Can they play spoiler? Florida going and playing A&M. We've got South Carolina going to LSU Saturday night. Likewise, we also have NC State playing Notre Dame. So we got a lot of really good football games. It's like it's been on a roller coaster this year so far. We'll have a good weekend, good weekend, good slate, bad slate, good slate, bad slate. Even then, last weekend, bad slate, very good weekend, a lot of good football. We're hoping for that again this upcoming weekend. Y'all tune in Thursday to hear all my picks on this upcoming weekend's action, and I will catch y'all then. In the meantime, y'all be easy. Take it easy. Be safe. Love y'all.